Hello! Here we go with chapter 14, The Ancient Connection of Charlie's Raven, read with permission from Scholastic Publishing Company. As we read, I want you to think about a couple questions. First of all, think about what kind of people are in this book and what makes them unique. And then also think about the kind of people that Charlie is associating with and how that influences him. Okay, chapter 14, The Ancient Connection. By late December, the snow was 4 feet deep in Teton Valley and still piling up. It was Friday afternoon. Charlie was in his history class, doodling in his Raven notebook and waiting for class to end so that he could watch the snowplow to Granddad's and save his dad, so he could catch the snowplow to Granddad's and save his dad a trip. So I'm thinking there's a little bit of a text to self there, because if you think about when we're in class and you're doodling in your nature guides, he's doodling in his Raven notebook. What's more, he liked to be with Jerry, the snowplow man. Jerry saw just about every species of Rocky Mountain wildlife as he plowed the wilderness roads, and he knew a lot about them. Charlie drew an X for Granddad's ranch house and another X for his school. He wrote down the distance between the two. As the raven flies, 15 miles. And in Singing Bird's mysterious column, he wrote, December 17th. Where is blue sky during the week? He turns up at Granddad's almost at the same instant I do. And yet, he is not at Granddad's from Monday through Friday. Grandma Sally checked under the porch eaves during the week, and he's not there. So where does he spend his weekdays? This evening, Jerry, our snowplow man, is going to take me the long way to Sagebrush Flats roads. He said he's seen a flock of ravens over near Morton. They were feeding on carcasses of bison and elk. Maybe Blue Sky's among them. I keep wondering just what role I play in Blue Sky's life now that Granddad says I'm no longer his mom. I have the eeriest feeling about it. Score one for the supernatural and Mr. Spender. The bell rang and school was over for Christmas vacation. Parkas were thrown on, snowboards grabbed, packed, shouldered, and in 15 minutes the corridors were empty of kids. It was winter in the mountain valley. In 5 minutes, Charlie was on Jerry's snowplow. Your grandma wants you to pick up her groceries at Smiley's grocery store, Jerry said as he drove the snowplow truck slowly down the country road to the store. Charlie jumped out and returned in several minutes with 2 brown paper bags that he put on the floor at his feet. Jerry drove on in the fiery glow of a red sunset. As they passed the marshes on the outskirts of town, Charlie looked at the frozen home of the trumpeter swans. There were only a few hundred of these gorgeous white birds left on Earth, and no one seemed to know how to bring them back. The pair had flown south with the first snow, but Charlie liked to close his eyes and pretend that they were still there. Funny thing, Jerry said as they shifted gears to climb out of the lowlands. A bunch of ravens landed on the store roof when you were in there. They seemed to be looking for something, poking and flipping snow and stuff. When I got out to clean the headlights, they flew away. Ravens at the grocery store, Charlie said. I wonder if Mr. Smiley feeds them on the roof like Grandma Sally does. I don't think so, said Jerry. He thinks ravens are pests. Mumbled Charlie. One more item in the mysterious column. Jerry drove onto the Crystal River Road, which ran along the south side of Bison Butte. The road crossed the frozen bottomlands and went along the rocky ridges south of Morton. Rocky Ridges, do you hear that alliteration? And River Road. Mule deer grazed on the wind-swept slopes of the butte. 3 bighorn sheep stood motionless on the skyline like public statues. There's a great simile. They're standing motionless like public statues. Charlie was gladdened by the sight of the handsome animals, and then a raven flew by, and something like love surged through him. His heartbeat quickened as he felt as if he could fly. When they plowed the lane of one of Jerry's customers, a fishing guide, he asked if they'd seen any ravens lately. Ravens? The man said. There are enough ravens up at the Warm Springs and Slide Canyon to blacken a football field. Those birds are some kind of magic, he went on. They turn somersaults in the air, flatten out and fly side by side in ribbons and triangles and half moons. That's raven stuff, all right, Charlie said. Then Jerry drove the snowplow toward the springs. As they approached, a black cloud arose from the field. Ravens, said Charlie, hundreds of them. Gee, I'll never find blue sky. So did you catch that metaphor? The ravens rising up like a black cloud from the field. The blue wing feathers reflected back the red light of the low sun as the ravens circled and looped against the sky. Charlie thought he was watching fireworks. "How do you like that?" said Jerry of the performance. "I've never seen that before." Charlie jumped from the cab and plowed through the snow to the ravens' gathering field. Even in the twilight, he could see why they had come here. Elk guts were strewn over the area. This was not the hunting season. Some poachers had brought their animals here to butcher and had spread out the guts so the ravens and coyotes would clean up the evidence. "Another score for the good column," Charlie said to Jerry as he got back in the cab, then added, "If you're a poacher." "What's this score for the good column all about?" Jerry asked. "You know what?" Charlie said and laughed. "I really don't know. I've been doing a scientific study to find out if ravens are good or bad. But what I have found out so far is that ravens are ravens are ravens." Jerry turned the snowplow around and drove north to Sagebrush Flats Road. Bison were huddled in dark clumps on the vast landscape of snow. They were digging with their sharp forehooves and uncovering grasses. Ravens joined them, alighting in their diggings to pick up dormant insects. The bison did not chase them off, as Charlie watched Singing Bird's legend become real. "Seems that the big mammals do like the ravens," he said, "and ravens do like the big mammals." "Sure," said Jerry. "Animals give and take out here in the wilderness. They've worked something out over the ages, but as far as I'm concerned, they're the only ones that know what it is." "And I wish I knew and could tell you," Charlie said. "What I'd really like to know," he said to himself, "is just who I am in Blue Sky's world. Then I would really have earned the raven owner's drum." Jerry stopped the snowplow and reached for his binoculars. He focused them on a distant peak of the landscape and then handed them to Charlie. "Mountain lion," he said. "Interesting. My snowplow buddies and I are seeing a lot of desperate winter activity. A mountain lion out in the flats by day is one of them." Desperate winter activity? "The snow's so deep this year that the moose and deer can't find greens to eat. They're weak, and that brings on the predators. I've seen more wolves down from Yellowstone this winter than I've ever seen before. And now here's a mountain lion." "He must be really hungry," said Charlie, "to be out in the daylight." "I'm sure he is," Jerry said. "He's got a lot of competition." It was almost dark when Jerry drove the snowplow up to Granddad's gate, and Charlie jumped out. "Come on in for dinner," he said. "Grandma invites you through me. There's always enough. She can make food appear endlessly." "Thanks, but I've got to get back," he said. "Timber, my 6-year-old, wants me to play with him tonight before he goes to bed." The snowplow's headlights cut shaft in winter's early darkness as it departed through the walls of snow. A great horned owl called. Charlie took the tramped path to the ranch house porch. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. "Blue Sky!" The glistening black raven lit on his shoulder. "Where did you come from?" He looked back in the direction from which he had arrived and saw no answer to the question. No tree, no dwelling, only snow. "One more for the mystery column," he said, "but I'm sure glad to see you. Let's eat." With Blue Sky grrring sounds of contentment in his ear, Charlie swept the snow off his boots and was reaching for the door when it opened. There stood Singing Bird. "Hey," Charlie said, smiling broadly, "what are you doing here?" "Mom and Dad wanted to come back to Sagebrush Flats for Christmas," she said. Blue Sky brushed her face as he flew past her to Granddad. "Blue Sky," she exclaimed. "Oh, this is great. Blue Sky's still here." He sailed right to Granddad's knee. Then he puffed his feathers and lifted his ears to show that he was of higher rank than Granddad. "Yes, boss," he said, and sat up straighter. Charlie gave Granddad a hug. "How are you feeling?" "Not so good." "But Blue Sky cured you, didn't he?" Not quite the way I thought he would, but he hid the orange pills and showed us that mixing your pills was wrong." He did that, young Hippocrates. Did do that. Okay, so Hippocrates is a ancient philosopher of medicine. So they're calling, I bet it's Hippocratic, because I've heard of the Hippocratic Oath, which is what doctors take. So the young Hippocratic did do that. So he's comparing the raven to a young ancient philosopher of medicine. Granddad said, then slowly added, "But not even the magic of a raven can cure what I have." Charlie dug his nails into his palms and in a low voice asked, "What is it?" An old heart slowing down. He looked out the big window. "Beauty all around me, with it I wander. In old age traveling, with it I wander. On the beautiful trail I am, with it I wander." So do you recognize that he's using part of the Navajo song chant? Charlie bit his lips tightly together. Grandma Sally saw him struggling with his feelings and stepped into the living room. She slipped an arm around his shoulder. Granddad touched Blue Sky's beak. "Let's talk," he said to the bird. "You look absolutely marvelous." "Grrrs and crums" from Blue Sky. He flicked the membranes across his eyes as he made love gurgles. Then he quirked. When Granddad ran out of words of praise, Grandma Sally put another plate on the table for Singing Bird, and they all sat down to dinner. Monday came, and Blue Sky did not leave. "Seems to me," said Grandma Sally, "that when Charlie is here, Blue Sky is here." "Ah," said Granddad, "that seems to be true. But let's test it. Charlie, why don't you go to town when Grandma goes shopping this afternoon and spend the night? We'll see if Blue Sky stays here." "Go to town for a night when I can be out here?" "I ran your experiment," Granddad said. "Now let's run mine." "Well," Charlie said, procrastinating. "You could help your mom get the Christmas tree and bring it out," said Grandma Sally, who was also eager to know what the results of the experiment would be. Charlie spent that night in town. So predict to yourself, what do you think will happen? Will Blue Sky stay with Grandma Sally and Granddad, or will he disappear because Charlie's not there? The next morning, the temperatures had dropped so low the valley was sparkling with snow. Tree limbs and buds, telephone poles and their wires, houses, cars, and the empty Spender Ranch house glistened with feathery crystals. Grandma Sally, as she had promised to do for her part in the experiment, stepped out the door before dawn to see if Blue Sky had spent the night under the eaves. He had not. She saw no raven, only the frosted world. She paused and gazed across the land. "As long as I live, I will never get used to the beauty of winter up here in the mountains," she said to herself. Then she reported to Granddad that Blue Sky was not in his weekend roost. "Progress," he said. "Now to observe what happens when Charlie comes back." 7 hours later, Charlie and Andy jumped out of their family's red truck and were untying the Christmas tree when Blue Sky flew down to its branches and landed on them as lightly as down. Nancy and Chris were looking to see where he'd come from when Grandma Sally came out to greet them. "Hey, Grandma," Charlie called. "Blue Sky spent the night, didn't he?" "No." "But he came down the minute I came out of the truck. He can't have been far away." "Write it down," shouted Blue Sky, and flew to the ranch house roof. He gobbled a choice piece of cutthroat trout Grandma Sally had tossed there on the chance that he might spend the night and want a snack in the morning. It was this day before Christmas Eve, and by Carlisle family tradition, too early to trim the tree. Charlie put it in a stand in the corner of the living room, pulling out his snow boots and gaiters, and went out to shovel snow and be with Blue Sky. So one thing I always think is interesting is to talk with the class about your family traditions for the holidays. Do you put a tree up? Do you wait until Christmas Eve? Do you put it up like right after Thanksgiving holiday? Lots of people have different traditions, and so it's always fun to talk about if we have some text-to-self connections with Charlie. In the late afternoon, the temperature dropped to 10 below zero. Charlie stoked the wood stove until its radiant heat warmed the whole house. Blue Sky went to his porch roost early. The air crackled, and the ice on the distant river boomed as it thickened. The porcupine left the far corner of the pump house and curled up under the warm pump, but not before chewing on one of Grandma Sally's wooden garden shoes. Early on Christmas Eve, Charlie went to the tool shed for the cedar Yule log he had cut last summer. As he approached the shed, he saw the huge tracks of a mountain lion. "Whoa," he said, "lions don't come down near people." Hoping to see the big cat, he followed the tracks to the woodshed, around his cabin, and on to the bison fence. There they ended. "He can't be far," he said to himself, and recalled Jerry's comment about desperate winter activity. He shouldered the big log and carried it to the hearth. Granddad was cleaning the glass doors of the wood stove so that the fire could be seen more clearly. "Granddad," Charlie said, "there are mountain lion tracks down going from the woodshed to the bison fence." "Mountain lion?" Granddad stopped wiping. "I haven't seen one down here ever. That's bad, and I mean it. When cougars have to come this close to humans, they're desperate, probably starving. Keep checking on him." "Hello, hello!" Singing Bird and the Soaring Swallow were knocking on the door. "We're bringing our prairie gifts," Soaring Swallow said as she put 2 packages in the festival basket. Together for Christmas, the Carlyles and the Kentons joined in a special festival. Each person had months of thought and care. After months of thought and care, chose one of their dearest possessions to give on the holiday. The gifts were then wrapped and placed in Grandma Sally's festival basket. They bore no name of neither the recipient nor the giver. On Christmas Day, each person would choose one of the presents. After opening it, the giver would tell the story behind his gift. Sometimes the story brought tears, sometimes laughter. No other presents were exchanged. After Singing Bird and Soaring Swallow had put their presents in the basket and Nancy and Chris had gone off to their room to unpack, Andy helped Charlie string the tree lights. Grandma Sally went outside to the tool shed for the folding table that traditionally held the Christmas venison and all the trimmings. She was struggling with the shed door when Blue Sky appeared, quirking and squawking. He sat on the woodpile. Kee, kee, kee! He then flew to the shed door. Kee, 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 kee! He kept up the noise until Grandma Sally became annoyed. Oh, stop, she said, and bent over to look for the table. Blue Sky took to his wings, screaming louder and faster. Then tipping his right wing at Grandma Sally, he quirked strange sounds and flew toward the woodshed. What's the matter with you? Grandma shouted. And then it occurred to her that Blue Sky might be telling her something. She looked up. A mountain lion was crouched on the roof of the shed, his yellow eyes pinned on hers. He was poised to spring. Charlie! She screamed and backed away. Charlie, who had heard the crazy cries of Blue Sky, was already on the porch. He heaved a piece of firewood at the lion. The log hit the shed eaves. The mountain lion leapt into the snow and ran. Grandma Sally stood still. She wasn't shaking, but she was icy cold. Thank you, Blue Sky, she said, and went into the house without brushing off her boots. She sat down on the stool beside Granddad. When she finished telling him how Blue Sky warned her that a mountain lion was about to attack, she was shivering. Singing Bird picked up the telephone and called her dad. String your bow and get an arrow, she said. A mountain lion is headed your way. Nancy brought Grandma Sally a glass of water, and Charlie put a hand on Granddad's trembling shoulder. That's put 5 marks in the good column, Charlie said. Not so fast, cautioned Granddad. Remember Singing Bird's legend? The raven led the wolf to the bison so he could eat them. You mean Blue Sky was telling the lion where Grandma was? Not telling Grandma where the lion was? Leading predators to prey and following predators to the carcass is ancient raven behavior. Charlie was furious at Granddad for even thinking that. This was different. This was Blue Sky. Of course Blue Sky was warning Grandma. It had to be. He wanted that way. Granddad was a scientist, but Charlie had lived with Blue Sky. He saw more than notes and data. He saw the beyondness of nature where the unimaginable happens, and he knew it had. He looked at Grandma Sally and saw that she too thought Blue Sky had warned her. No, Granddad, he said finally with certainty. Blue Sky knew what he was doing. He saved Grandma. I know that. I had just fed him. He wasn't even hungry. Granddad thought about that. That's mind-blowing, he said. So pretty awesome chapter to think about how Blue Sky has interacted with the family and in such a vital way, saving Grandma Sally from the mountain lion. We will tune in next time for chapter 15. Thanks.